So let's talk a little bit about Kanban here. And we've seen earlier that Kanban falls under both lean as well as agile, because if you look at the philosophy or the principles in lean, as well as you look at the principles that are found under agile, there are very, very similar principles that are found in both. So things like delivering value, respecting people, minimizing waste, transparency, adaptability to change, continuous improvement, they are found both under agile as well as lean philosophies. And that's why Kanban sits in a position where many people would say that it's a lean agile framework, rather than just saying that it's a lean framework or it's just an agile framework. Well, that debate is not really important. What is important here is what Kanban is and how it can be utilized to benefit your organization. So one of the main things to point out when I talk about the difference between Kanban and agile is that Kanban can be used even outside of a product development context. So if you look at Scrum, for instance, like if you've worked with Scrum, or if you understand Scrum is used in projects where there's a deadline, right, or there's a release date. So generally product development would have a deadline or would have a release date. So you're working at a regular cadence, and when you reach the end of your cadences, or when you reach the end of the certain number of sprints that you're doing, you want to deliver something of value to the end user or to the customer. On the other hand, Kanban can be applied in even a day-to-day operational context, which means it can be applied for as long as a product is alive, or it can be applied for work that is continuous and it's kind of never ending. So Kanban basically works really well as a workflow management method. That's what you should be understanding Kanban as, and it kind of applies really well to the areas of knowledge work. So knowledge work is work that you do on a day-to-day basis. So knowledge work exists in software development, it exists in IT operations, it exists in day-to-day operations of so many different organizations and so many different departments, and so many different areas of the business. So it applies to knowledge work in software development. For example, it can apply to development, or it can apply to testing, for instance. And Kanban, like agile, is very generic. So it can be applied in any situation. So it can be applied to a marketing department, it can be applied to a finance department, and I'm going to talk about departments or functions other than software development, because we all know that these things really work well in software development. But what about other areas? So it can work in any area where you need to manage, or you need a system to be able to manage your work more efficiently on a day-to-day basis, which means you want to do some capacity based planning, or you want to ensure that there is proper prioritization happening. In all these contexts, Kanban would work really, really well. And the good thing about Kanban is that it is a lot less prescriptive than Scrum, for instance, right? Scrum has certain rules that needs to be followed. They have certain artifacts, although the rules are less, and it's a lot less prescriptive than predictive frameworks. But Kanban, is even a step further down as compared to Scrum. So, Kanban can just be taken as is, and it can be applied to wherever you are currently sitting at. So it has a start where you are sort of an approach. And what you can do is, if you want to learn a little more about Kanban, you can actually watch our 2-hour webinar video, which is a part of the Career Sprint site membership, and you will get a much better understanding of Kanban, because that covers Kanban in depth. And pretty much for the PMP exam, this is the amount of knowledge that you need for understanding the Kanban framework. You don't need to go really, really deep into day-to-day practices, but you need to understand it, generally what it means, what it does, what it's used for, and so on and so forth.